So one of my observations that it sounds crazy, but I think might be true is I think actually all the ideas might be good. Like I think like qualified founders who know what they're doing, I think generally are right about the opportunity that they're going after, and that like it's just like, okay, if you're like a qualified founder doing what you're doing, you should be so deep in the domain that when you think about like, okay, this technology now makes this use case possible, and we can build a product that does that, people are going to want that. Like I think the accuracy rate on that is almost 100%. The problem is the timing. And early is the same as being wrong, right, in practice, right? And you see this, the pattern, you see this in the pattern, which is basically, what you see basically is anytime there's like an overnight success, like a technology company that just like lights the world on fire, is doing great, what you find is basically there were a set of companies that tried to do that same thing 5 years earlier and failed, 5 years before that and failed, 5 years before that and failed, 5 years before that and failed. Often goes back, by the way, I mentioned the e-commerce and the phone thing. The first actual smartphone came out in 1987. Right, and so there were literally 20 years of failed attempts to do smartphones until the iPhone, 20 years, right? And so, and there, those founders, I knew many of the founders trying to do smartphones before the iPhone, and they were very, very smart, capable people. Many of them very successful in other domains, and very successful later on. It was just too early. Like the technology wasn't ready yet. And so there's this, and then why is this hard? It's hard for basically two reasons. One is because to be a successful founder, by definition, you have to live in the future, right? So you have to envision a world that doesn't exist yet, in which the thing that you're building is something that everybody's going to use, and like people around you like can't see that yet because it doesn't exist yet. And so like you see a vision of the world that doesn't yet exist, and that may be right, and it may not be right. Or it may happen now and it may not happen now. And then the other thing about it is it's just like the world gets a vote. And I think one of the really interesting kind of conceptual questions is, there's like the push side of like you trying to make something happen in the world and trying to get the world to understand something and want to do something and buy something. But then there's like some sociological thing on the other side, which is like, okay, when is the world actually ready for the new idea? I mean, here's another like really amazing thing. Somebody got somebody got one of the small versions of Llama to run on Windows 98. On a PC, they booted up literally a Dell desktop computer from I think 1998 with a fresh copy of Windows 98, and they got Llama running on it. And so like all of those old PCs literally could have been smart this whole time. Like they really could have been. And like we had neural networks, right? And there were lots of people working on AI, but like we could have been talking to our computers in English for like the last basically almost 30 years. We now know, and yet. Crazy alternate history, and like we didn't, like it just whatever there was an AI startup boom in the 80s. Like there were a lot of really smart people in the 80s who thought that this was all going to happen then. There were people in the 50s who thought it was going to happen then. And so this timing thing is just like incredibly difficult. And then just practically speaking, as a startup, you only have so long to either prove it right or not. And so and basically it's like give or take 5 years total. Right, you can if you don't get traction of the startup in the first 5 years, your odds of success are very low, just because it's very hard to hold the team together.
And you're going to race against time, right?
What's that?
You're going to race against time.
Yeah, you're in a race against time, and then you end up in this frustrating. I have a lot of friends who've ended up in this frustrating circumstance where you started a company in 2010, you thought now was the time, your company failed in 2014, and then a company started in 2015 that just like hit it and went. Right, and so the timing part of it is very hard. I don't think there's an answer. I don't think there's an actual answer to the timing thing, other than I think that's a really key part of they call entrepreneurial judgment. Like I think that's a big thing that the founder has to really work hard about and think hard about. And again, it's this thing of like reconciling. I live in the future and I can see it happening, but like, can I actually deliver it in the form of a product that actually works the way people expect? And then is there enough precondition in the world such that they're going to want to actually do this thing? And I just like, I mean, these guys will tell you, like, I don't even try to forecast these things myself anymore. Like in meetings, I just figure like, let's just assume the founder is more likely to be right than we are, just because like this is the founder's best guess is probably the best guess that exists, because the founders have the most information to kind of synthesize a view on this. But having said that, we're going to back, I don't know, like a third of the companies or whatever, and we're going to back in a given year. It's just going to turn out that they were too early.